Hello, nerds! Nerds for Yang. This is the first video I'm doing after my post-debate angry nerd rant against NBC and MSNBC. For this video, it's going to be an open letter to CNN about the upcoming July debates. So if you listen to this and you agree with what I'm saying and you think it should be considered, please like, comment, and share. Tweet it out at CNN and just help spread the word, because what I'm proposing is something that I think will benefit all of the candidates, CNN, the DNC, and ultimately result in a better outcome in the election in terms of making sure the best candidate for the country emerges. Let's summarize quickly where we are, and then we'll get into what I'm proposing. You can then think about whether you want to support this effort. Where are we right now? Post-NBC debate, you've got a lot of the backers of the smaller candidates, for sure the Yang Gang, pretty frustrated. Got Biden wounded, really starting to show his weakness as a candidate, even in the polls right after the first debate. You've got Harris surging, and she's going to want to prove that this wasn't just one night, that she can deliver consistent, strong performance. You've got Warren, who was kind of the winner the first night, but then got overshadowed by Harris the second night. She's going to want to emerge and solidify her position as, you know, the alternative to Bernie. And you've got general feeling by many independents, certainly many Trump voters, that, oh, this whole field is a clown show, because in many ways the candidates did not look great because it was so much bickering and also all these like very, very polarizing questions. So that's kind of the situation. Now, why is this complicated for CNN? You know, in fairness, even for NBC and MSNBC, they have a hard hand to play. Now, could NBC have done a better job? For sure. But it's not easy. There are way too many candidates. There's, 24, maybe 25 that have announced, 20 that are eligible for these first rounds of debates. That's just really hard to have a meaningful dialogue when there's so many candidates. Yes, they split them up into 2 days. Each day is 2 hours. But, with commercials and everything, it might only be like 90 minutes total for talk time and maybe 10 candidates per night. So that's 9 minutes per candidate. I think Yang got 2 minutes, so thanks a lot, MSNBC. But at any rate, it's hard. So let's acknowledge that that's complicated. Let's also acknowledge that these are situations where no one will be happy. It's kind of like anytime there's a competition, there's going to be people that feel like it wasn't fair, or it kind of favored another candidate, or, the fix was in, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of a thankless job hosting these debates, although probably pretty amazing ratings for the owners of those networks. Third, CNN can't be seen, and any network really can't be seen as being railroaded. They need to feel like they have their journalistic integrity and they're really smart, they're professionals. They're not going to change the rules because some random guy on YouTube says they should. But, unless the random guy has reasonable ideas, then maybe you should consider them. And lastly, most people don't want to hear from the small fish. So as much as we love to hear Andrew Yang talk and we wish he had more time, I'm sure a lot of people felt like he had too much time. I think there was a video of some NBC analyst saying, oh no, we know who people want to hear from, and basically like they don't want to hear from these small fringe candidates. So the same way when we were watching maybe Williamson or, Hickenlooper or any of these other guys talking, we're like, not interested. I'm sure they felt the same way. Their supporters felt the same way when the Yang was talking. So you do have this reality of the majority of people, by definition, are not interested in the majority of the candidates. These guys they need to own up to their shareholders, and if they give everybody equal time, they are giving the majority of the audience less than what they want. And so there is a tough balancing act between your your job as a journalist and a news network, and your desire to deliver what's essentially a product to millions of people so that you can sell ads. Those are some of the complications. Now, does that mean that we're like, oh, well, whatever, it's really hard, good luck, CNN? There are things that I think CNN can consider for the July debate rules that would make this a better outcome, let's say, than NBC and MSNBC had. Let's see if we can agree on some principles first. So the first principle is we want the best candidate to emerge. We're not doing these debates because we want the worst candidate to emerge or the one with the most money to emerge. We want the best candidate. The best meaning the candidate that is best qualified to win and in the general, and also represents the values and goals of the Democratic Party members. Well, another one is we want everyone to have a chance. We don't want this to be a coronation. We don't want this to be a test of who has more name recognition or who's already working in Washington. What we'd rather say is we want the best person to emerge. We want to evaluate them like a job interview. And just because they have a great resume, it doesn't mean they automatically get the job. We want to actually probe and test and challenge them a little more. The third principle is we want transparency. We don't want these debates to have rules and implementations that have major impact on the outcome of the debate, and it's unclear why it was set up that way. So as open and clear and publicly you can make the management and setup of the debate, the better. One example of the implications of these debates is I think Harris raised $2 million 24 hours after the debate. Clearly, she had some great answers. She has some great strategy that really resonated with a lot of people, so I don't want to take that away from her. But I'm just saying, if her mic were turned off and she never got asked questions, I don't think she would have raised $2 million. The reverse is also true. I think if Andrew Yang had been asked more than 2 questions and had been given more than 2 minutes, I think he probably would have raised a lot more than he has. Getting on stage is part of it, but he's got to get a fair chance to compete. There needs to be a clear, open, transparent way that they're going to decide, where do you sit? How do you get asked questions? Who gets asked which questions? How many questions do you get asked? How much time do you have? The next principle is we want to have a thoughtful dialogue. We're not looking for gotcha questions. We're not looking for cute, funny questions or quick and dirty, raise your hand if you believe X or Y. What we want is to go and peel the onion at least 1 or 2 layers deeper to really start to understand how these candidates think. And we also want to, lastly, the principle should be we want to see how they think on their feet. So much like a job interview, we don't want canned answers. There's going to be plenty of that, but to the extent that we can, we want to see how these candidates think without having a lot of prepared notes and prepared answers, and how quickly they can react, because obviously when you are in the White House, you're going to need to think on your feet and make great decisions and exercise great judgment. So in light of these principles, best candidate to emerge, everyone has a chance, transparency, thoughtful dialogue, see the candidates on their feet. How might we run a debate if we were CNN? And how might we want CNN to consider running its debate? Number 1, no more open live mic for all 10 candidates simultaneously. Shut them off. Shut them all off. Unless the moderators call on the candidate, they're all muted. Otherwise, it just encourages, no offense to Gillibrand supporters, but it encourages people like Gillibrand to just interject. Then everybody else interjects, and you've got 10 people talking at the same time. And then Harris says, come on, people. We didn't want a food fight. We want to talk about food on the table. I know people love that one, but that whole thing, there was a lot of manufactured Harris stuff. But we're not going to go there. What we can say is that if no one has their mic on except for the person who's called on, you can actually have a more orderly debate. It does not reward breaking of the rules. And certainly, it does not reward candidates who have their mics on and other candidates who don't have their mics on, who then don't even have the option to interject. So rule 1, no live mic. Everybody is shut off. And If the moderator says you have 30 seconds to answer the question, on second 31, your mic should be shut off. You cannot give like a 2-minute speech and take up the whole debate because you won't stop talking. And in fairness to the candidates, I kind of blame the debate management because they're leaving these mics on. What do you think? They're going to censor themselves? Like they're going to say, oh, my time's up? Like that's not going to happen on a regular basis. Yes, Biden did it once. I doubt he's going to do it again. So just shut off their mic, turn it on when you want them to answer that specific one, and then when their time's up, turn it off. Number 2, no raise your hand if questions. These questions are complicated, nuanced questions like, do you support covering undocumented workers in your government healthcare plan? That's not a yes or no question. It depends. Like, well, is the undocumented worker paying taxes? Have they been in the country for a long time? Did they just cross over to the border and now they want plastic surgery? What's the level of coverage? Is it just basic coverage like emergency room and general physician? Is it the full 9 yards? These are hard questions to answer with just raising your hand. And what it does is if you don't raise your hand, then people assume the worst, like, oh my God, this candidate's going to turn away dying people at the hospital. If you do raise your hand, it's like, oh my God, these candidates are supporting unlimited free healthcare for the world. So no more of these raise your hand if questions. Ask them, if you want to ask that question, ask one of them and give them time to give a nuanced answer. Next, track airtime. So it is 2019. It is very easy for a bunch of CNN interns to hit a start button when each candidate speaks and a stop button when they stop speaking. And that will help make sure that we have a tracking of how much each person is talking. And halfway through the debate, or maybe every 20 minutes, take a look at the leaderboard and be like, oh, it looks like candidate B has been talking forever and candidate K has said nothing. So maybe we should ask them the next question. Or let's make sure that the candidate that's spoken the least is at least half of the candidate that has spoken the most. This will ensure that we get to hear from everyone. Doesn't mean that everybody gets the exact same number of minutes, but it avoids these mass disparities like we saw at MSNBC where some people were getting 14 minutes and some people were getting like 2 minutes and change. Last proposal for CNN's consideration, publish your rules openly. Be very clear about what you're going to do about the mics. Be very clear on what you're going to do about making sure there's equal opportunity for the candidates to compete. Be very clear about what you're going to do if people talk overtime, what you're going to do if people talk without being asked. Be very clear if everybody's mic is going to be on or off, and just be as transparent as possible. If you do all those things, like in business, we should be able to measure success. So what does success look like? I would propose 3 things. 1, we want minimum drama after the debate about the format, the management, fairness. I'm not saying that everybody on Twitter is going to be saying, oh my God, CNN's the perfect debate moderator. But you don't want a significant number of people clearly and reasonably calling out obvious problems with the management of the debate that resulted in obvious lack of fairness. So the smoking gun for NBC, in my opinion, was the New York Times chart showing how much time each candidate got. And basically, you had Biden, Harris, Mayor Pete, Sanders all getting over 10 minutes each. And you had Yang getting 2 minutes, 58 seconds. That's not a fair debate. That's basically you only care about a handful of candidates, and even though everybody qualified to be there and the Democratic National Committee agreed that everybody had a right on that stage to be on that stage, I don't remember the DNC saying, oh, well, you qualify to be in the debate, and then you just stand there. And if that's the policy, then the DNC needs to be clear on what they mean by how they're running these debates. So, number 1 success outcome is no drama. So at the end of the CNN debate, people should say, well, I wish they did this or that differently, but in general, it was a fair fight. Number 2, you'd want good ratings in the second hour. A lot of people I talked to, especially independents and Trump voters, said they tried to watch the beginning of the Democratic debates and they ended up turning it off because it was just bickering and nonsense and 30-second kind of canned answers. And so I would argue that if viewers learn a lot and they stay for the full 2 hours of each debate, kudos to CNN. You've done a job where people are feeling like, oh, this is meaningful dialogue, and it happens to be good for CNN as well. And last, that the candidates also feel like they got a fair fight. So obviously after the NBC debate, we all saw a lot of footage from some candidates, including Yang and Williamson, saying, hey, you know, like my mic was shut off, I wasn't able to interject. Because a lot of people were saying, hey, why aren't you being more aggressive? Like, force your way in there, do a Gillibrand. And if your mic's not turned on, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to, like, jump up and down and make a big scene? So in summary, we have a huge debate on CNN in Detroit on July 30 and July 31st. It's going to be a high-stakes debate. If you are not a top-tier candidate and you want to break through, you're going to start running out of chances. A lot of pressure on this one, and a lot of pressure on CNN to make sure it's a fair fight. We also all want the same thing. We want transparency, we want fairness, we want the best candidate to emerge, we want meaningful dialogue. The way I would propose doing that, no live mics if you're not called on, no live mic if you're going over time, track the airtime per candidate and make sure the least called on candidate at least has half as much time as the most called on candidate. Publish the rules and the format openly beforehand, and track your success by how many viewers thought it was useful, how many stayed on the full 2 hours, did candidates think it was a fair fight, and also did you avoid any major drama and trending hashtags about why CNN was rigged. So if you agree with these ideas, or at least most of them, tell me where you agree and maybe where you don't agree. And please share this out, tweet it out to CNN, and hopefully someone on the CNN producer team sees this and says, yeah, maybe I don't agree with everything that this guy's saying, but some of this stuff makes sense, and we want to implement that because we want to do a way better job than NBC and MSNBC did. If you like this video, consider also subscribing to the Nerds for Yang channel. I'm super excited. We recently passed 5,000 subscribers. I think we might be one of the largest Andrew Yang channels on YouTube. I know there's not that many of us, but it's cool to be part of the movement. And I do uploads every week, so if this was useful and you like this kind of stuff, check out the channel. I've got a lot of other things about policy, and I'll be covering the election going forward on a weekly basis. In the meantime, keep it real.